You want me to be quiet? You want me to stop posting on social media? You want me to stop speaking out about how I feel? Folks, what does your social media look like these days? Mine's a mess. I've got a handful of people of all the thousands of people that follow me that seem to think that it's okay for one person to have free speech, but others to not. This is becoming a huge deal in our society today. People literally in the same breath can justify and be okay with cops giving tickets to churchgoers, but are frustrated when they want to give tickets to looters. It makes no sense, folks. We've reached catastrophe level retardedness, okay? It's unbelievable. I got a guy on my Facebook page. This just makes me so frustrated. I can't even stand myself. People who just don't seem to get that we're fighting on the same side, man. We're just peasants here. Like, I know that's sometimes I think it's kind of a funny name for my podcast and is a peasant's perspective, but I really do feel this. I really do feel like we're all just peasants. This guy on my Facebook is like, "Oh, you're making another post talking about how, things are bad or whatever." I'm like, dude, look around. Look around. Look around us right now. Is this reality? Like 2020? Is this for reals? So we start off the year with a scam impeachment against our president, which we watched that train wreck coming for quite a while. Then we get COVID-19, right? We got to shut our businesses down, shut the economy down, stay at home for weeks on end. I mean, this is no small thing, right? Like we have the best economy the world has ever known, and then we have to just shut her down. Just turn it off, stay at home, there's a virus. And then we watch in horrors discussed as our leaders show total incompetence, okay? And I'm not even going to, I'm not leaving Donald Trump out of this criticism either, okay? I approve things like closing the border. I think that was an amazing move, especially politically, given the fact that you were being impeached during your impeachment trial even, that you did that. Like, I'm impressed, okay? Stones of cojones. And if this virus really is bad and spreads deadly, at that time, that seemed like the best decision. In retrospect, I don't know. Should we have even done anything? Maybe we should have just not even reported on it, because it might have just sunk into our system like the flu. I mean, if it were not for Andrew Cuomo, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York City, if it were not for him sending all those COVID positive patients back into nursing homes instead of into emergency care facilities, he sent them back to their nursing homes. Had he not done that, we'd have 35 or 40,000 less total deaths attributed to COVID. And this is on top of the fact that we've already watched the COVID numbers be grossly over-reported. Imagine the pit in our stomachs as we watched Dr. Deborah Bricks in the Corona Task Force meeting with her beautiful scarves all over, every day a new scarf. Oh my gosh, Colonel Ambassador Deborah Bricks, you're so wonderful. As she goes, we are counting everything as COVID. If you die of a car wreck and get positive with COVID, then that would show up in our numbers. We've taken the most liberal possible approach to counting COVID deaths. Why are you doing that? Well, I don't understand. Why do we have to do that? Don't we want to know people who die from COVID? I don't really care about people who die with COVID. Like, that's like tracking a number of how many people died with their hair combed and how many people died without their hair combed. If having their hair combed has nothing to do with them dying, then I don't care. All right? I don't care. We don't keep statistics on how many people have their shoes on or off when they die. Sorry, we don't do that. Why are we keeping statistics of people who die with COVID and then misleading Americans to think that they died from COVID? You know, it's pretty embarrassing when you've got nurses who get on their TikToks and show the world embarrassingly how they have to put COVID on the death certificate of someone who died in a car wreck. Dr. Deborah Bricks, why? Why would we do that? So in a nation of 360 million people, and with Andrew Cuomo sending patients into nursing homes to die, we've still topped 100,000 people in deaths. I just saw a report in the state of Washington. Our COVID numbers might be over-reported by as much as 80%. 80%. We have about 1,100 deaths in the state of Washington. There's just shy of 8 million people in the state of Washington. Now, if it was 1,000 deaths, that's tragic. And I don't want to make any death seem anything less than a tragedy. Because you know what the saying goes, one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic. So I know I'm banting about these death toll numbers real casually, and I don't want people to take that unseriously. I mean, I have a son who passed away who eventually became a statistic of just infant mortality, right? But yet my whole world was upside down. So I don't take these numbers lightly. I don't take them with a misunderstanding that each number is attached to a special story, a special name, and a special person. And I think us peasants need to recognize that when we see things like death toll numbers. We always do risk assessments and decide, should I go outside or not today based on the risk? But when it comes to things like the death toll numbers, we kind of want to know the specifics. You're asking us to stay home, shut down our businesses, homeschool our children, right? You're asking us to funnel into certain stores and not other stores. Like all the things you're asking for us, you better get those COVID stats right. Your testing better be nailed down packed, right? Let's look at the mess that we watched unfold during COVID. I'm just walking through 2020. I mean, this is just my 2020 rant because, another post about how bad it is. People want us to self-censor and just be lemmings and sheeple. All right, so get back to this. So the numbers are inflated by as much as 80% in the state of Washington, which means, we've had somewhere between 200 to 300 COVID deaths from COVID. So I have to ask myself, there was a measles outbreak almost comparable to those lower numbers a handful of years ago. Why didn't we shut our economy down then? It's even more contagious. That's one of the most contagious diseases. Oh, because it wasn't politically expedient, because we couldn't say Orange Man bad. I genuinely am to the point where from everything I can see, okay, I don't know if the virus is totally fake. I don't know if it was released as some kind of specific weapon, but I will tell you this. It was released out of Wuhan, China. I followed it from literally the first weeks that it was known to the world that this virus even existed while it was still contained in China. I watched their lockdown. I watched their brutality. And I remember watching the videos of the police brutality in China enforcing their lockdown, showing it to my friends and family, and saying, this is the stuff of nightmares. I hope it never comes here. And it came. Yep, it came. Now, our cops aren't quite as brutal because Americans quite simply comply. I mean, there's a lot to this, but we're a very self-assured country, and our politicians don't know where that comes from. Well, I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the Second Amendment. Okay? When we watch those videos in China, or, man, you want a real trip, go look at police brutality in Africa. I can show you, I could just pull up probably in 1 minute, I could find a random video from yesterday in Africa that would make the George Floyd murder look like a peaceful exit, okay? They are brutal. So in America, we don't seem to have that issue, and the reason is because of the Second Amendment, because we're self-assured that push come to shove, everything hits the fan, a lot of people have guns. Did you know in the state of Minnesota, there's like 1.7 million deer hunters that go out every year with the intention on snipering an animal anywhere from 20 to 600 yards away, and that every year in Minnesota there's typically less than one accidental death during the hunting season. That means you're successfully able to put over 1 million people, 1 million snipers into the bush and have no gun violence deaths. And look, you've got individual states that just the hunting permits alone represents enough rifles that's more rifles than most countries own. Okay, there's a lot of countries that can't outfit their militaries with as much rifles as the whitetail hunters in Kansas own. All right, so we're very self-assured people, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of leftist politicians that don't get it. There's a lot of leftist politicians that don't get it. There's a lot of Joe Biden politicians who, when push come to shove, will sit and talk about how they got a shotgun in their closet, but then they promote gun control. Trust me, folks, when push come to shove, ain't no one supporting gun control. Everybody wants a gun in their closet. There are millions, if not 1 billion guns in this country, okay? They ain't ever taken them back. Anybody who seriously studies the issue realizes you'll never disarm America. No king or tyrant will ever rule here because someone will take them out. It's just a fact, okay? So that's America. So when our government, of the people, by the people, for the people, says, hey, there's a serious virus, you got to stay home, America complied. Because we knew they weren't going to lock us in our homes. They weren't going to weld our apartments shut like they did in China. They weren't going to, take us down in mass on the streets. That was going to take a lot. I mean, we would have to self-police for that to happen. Well, we just about did, folks. Okay? So this goes on. The virus goes on. Now, the virus may or may not be a hoax. Okay, I really want to be careful myself about saying there is or isn't a virus. Obviously, lots of people have looked at this thing in a microscope, and so it must exist. Okay, what's its origins? That's like a whole different show, and I'm sure we'll get there when the protests are finally over and the financial system collapses on the horizon. I'm sure COVID will come back into the news cycle. For now, it's just kind of like, we don't want to talk about COVID because then we wouldn't be able to talk about the protesters because we would be frustrated that the protesters are on social distancing because we're totally hypocrites. All right. So I don't know if the COVID is a hoax, but the response to it is. And Donald Trump called it right at the beginning. He said the Democrats' response to this is a hoax. Closing the borders was sufficient. He probably could have put out some guidelines about social distancing, and we'd have been just fine. And in fact, that's all the federal government really did or could do, was 14 days to save America turned into 30 days to save America, and then social distancing guidelines, and then open up. And then he left it to the states. Now, the Democrats have made it seem like Donald Trump is some dictator tyrant. Look, if the virus is real, got to close the borders, got to stay home. I get it. But then once we realize that, hey, we've got some treatments, the hydroxychloroquine. Oh, let's get to that. Let's name all the things that are hoaxy about COVID-19, the Wuhan flu. Dr. Fauci, Dr. King, move the goalposts Fauci. Every freaking press conference, Americans don't need a mask. It really doesn't help you. In fact, it complicates things. Americans really should wear a mask. We should be wearing a mask. So which is it? Mask or no mask? We got to close. Oh, we can open up. Oh, schools got to close. Schools can open up. You guys moving the goalposts constantly. Name one work product that Dr. Fauci has produced. One. 36 years, 43 years, however long it's been. He's been at the Department of Infectious Disease. What's one single work product that Dr. Fauci has produced? What's one single projection model? One report? Name one thing that has been accurate. See, in our federal government, it's so broken that these people who've been there forever, they rise because of mediocrity. They rise because they don't take risks. They rise because they're cautious. Our system rewards that cautiousness, especially in the medical industry. Make big projections, then make some guidelines, and then when the big projections aren't met, you're rewarded because you're a hero. Guess what? The big projections never can happen, and that's what we're seeing, right? That's what we're seeing. Study after study. Oh, the death toll's a lot lower. Oh, the death toll's a lot lower. Here's another one. How about the fact that we already had a cure in mass quantities with hydroxychloroquine and the Z-Pack? How about that one? How about the fact that every study they've done that is a legitimate study has shown that it's overwhelmingly effective on not only preventing, but essentially curing the coronavirus. There was one single study done out of Brazil with 9 patients. 9 patients. Now, a handful of those patients died because they were giving overwhelmingly huge doses of hydrochloroquine. Now, this story seems to fall off the radar. You can find it in the New York Times and the Washington Post, but it's all on the back page. It was front page when the study came out saying that hydroxychloroquine could kill you. But now that the people who released the study are now being charged with murder in Brazil, murder. The doctors who did that study are being charged with murder in Brazil because the dosage of hydroxychloroquine that they gave to those elderly patients was so high, it was expected to kill them. They were murdered. And last week, there was another article that was put out that the motive seems to be all political, that they needed a report from someone legitimate to say hydroxychloroquine was bad. Remember, this is the malaria drug that we give to hundreds of thousands of people. If malaria breaks out in a city in Africa, they give the whole city this drug. They'll give 100,000 doses in one day in cities in Africa to when the malaria have outbreaks. It doesn't damage people. We've been using this thing for 50 years. It's a great drug. What it does is it opens up the cells, and then we take a Z-Pack with it. The zinc goes into the cells. Zinc can't get in the cells without the hydroxychloroquine. Zinc goes in the cells, and it makes you completely unable to get really sick with anything, okay? Like sick with cold viruses and malaria and things like that. It really fortifies the cells. So anyways, the study in Brazil, now they're charging those doctors with murder. We know this. These reports are public. They're out there. They're all over the place. But most people don't know that. They're like, oh, hydroxychloroquine bad. Then there was a second study done by the VA where the VA showed that there was some minor people that had some side effect from the hydroxychloroquine treatment. So they've kind of been running with that. Well, then I was listening to one of Donald Trump's cabinet meetings where they were talking over the COVID response. And one of the reporters, gave you one of those gotcha questions. Oh, you're taking hydroxychloroquine, Trump. Can't you believe that? Are you worried about this, that, or the other because of the VA study? And Donald Trump looks at the VA secretary and he goes, whoa, I can't remember his name right now. I'm supposed to remember the names, though. But he goes, would you like to say something about that? And the guy goes, well, everybody keeps citing this VA study, but I don't know what study that is what he says. He says, we did a study, and the study showed that the hydroxychloroquine was overwhelmingly good. And he said what few people had an adverse reaction we expected because they had the known pre-existing conditions that you would have. And so we monitored them. They still gave them the drug. They just monitored them. So that was the VA study. So we literally have the cure to COVID-19. Why are we putting any money into any other research for anything else? We don't need a vaccine. I don't know. Maybe we do, but whatever. You're moving the goalposts on us. You flipped our lives upside down. You created more unemployment than the Great Depression in 2 weeks. What? Okay, the pandemic goes away. We saw it before. 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu, and 100 years before that, we had some other plague that moved across the world. Okay, every 100 years we get one of these. Let's do it. 14 days to save America. Okay. Well, then, I can't remember if it was the exact same day or a day apart. We had two really interesting incidents. Now, we have now become fully aware of the fact that in the year of 2019, there were a grand total of 10 black unarmed men who were killed by white police officers, right? Because as Tucker Carlson says, if there's a genocide happening from police to black people, then the looting and rioting is all justified, right? There were 10. Of the 10, 6 of them attacked the police officers prior to being killed. All on body camera, all have footage and eyewitnesses. Cops were not charged. 4 of those cops were charged with crimes for killing those black men. Now, in the last weekend here, the last week in America, I think I saw some number. There was like 140 law enforcement officers that were critically injured or killed or something like that. These numbers are huge in comparison, right? So now we've gone from COVID-19, stay in your homes, funnel like cattle into the store, stand 6 feet away, put a mask on, don't go to church, don't go to the park. I'll tell you, I was absolutely disgusted when in Meridian, Idaho, Sarah Brady was arrested for taking her kids to the park. Disgusted. I spoke out about it on social media. I will not let that go. I don't care that Sarah Brady apologized. Her husband's a detective for the BPD. I cannot imagine the political pressure for her to have not done that and for her to apologize and make peace, right? I think she's got a lawsuit. I think she should take the state of Idaho to the Supreme Court and run them through the cleaners. I think Brad Little should resign for not having resolved that. He should have put that officer on administrative leave. Hell, he should have unlocked the whole state and let him go back to work. And that's how I feel about Sarah Brady. If there weren't riots, loots, and protests, imagine how I'd feel about George Floyd. I have a huge issue with use of force. I have a huge issue with unnecessary use of force. I have a huge issue with police brutality. I have a huge issue with tyranny. I'll fight against it till the day I die. This is ridiculous, folks. So that's last week. And then this week, we see George Floyd die. Now, we don't know who George Floyd is. All we see is a video of a cop kneeling on his neck. It's horrific. It's horrific. There's things that are said, oh, don't do drugs, kids, that the cop says, and we're all confused by that because, oh, Frank Lloyd doesn't seem to be on drugs. Well, let me tell you a little something about how this works. This is all a political game. Now, I've been into the prosecution and the back and forth, so I'm not going to go into that. But I do want to talk about the autopsy. What an interesting deal. So here we have Frank Lloyd, big man. I mean, big, tall African-American man, much stronger than any of the officers that came to detain him. Okay, he probably could have taken two of them, to be honest. I mean, let's just be realistic here. He's a bouncer. One of the cops knows he's a bouncer, worked at the restaurant with him. Maybe he's seen him in action. Maybe the cop has seen him in action and knows that Frank Lloyd could kick their butts. So they jump right to excessive force because they have pre-knowledge. Oh, here's another thing. Frank Lloyd's got a little bit of a history with long use of cocaine. You know what cocaine does? It messes up your heart and your arteries. Makes it really hard, to detect heart attacks and things like that. People get EKGs, and then they have issues that can't be diagnosed, and they find out they've had cocaine use, and then they go, oh, okay, well, that's why we can't see certain things on the EKG, because the cocaine use damages your heart and arteries. So Frank Lloyd had a long history with cocaine abuse. Now, some people say he'd cleaned up his life. Okay, except he was found with a lot of fentanyl in his system that he had taken recently. So when the cop says, don't do drugs, kids, you realize George Floyd's hopped up on fentanyl below him. Okay, now, again, I'm not passing too much judgment. I mean, George Floyd lost his life. That's horrible. And I'm not justifying for a millisecond what the cop did. But what I'm saying is we never get the whole story, do we? We never have enough patience to sit back and wait for the process to play itself out. That cop got arrested. The other cops got arrested. Okay, but we also found out about George Floyd. Now, isn't it funny that, of course, George Floyd's got to die from asphyxiation, directly from the injury caused by the police? That's the only way that this thing could go off right. So George Floyd his family has an autopsy done. Not the state autopsy, a private autopsy. Oh, they pulled the coroner, the private guy, the private doctor that did the autopsy on Jeffrey Epstein, the one that contradicted the official state autopsy. Yeah, that's right. The celebrity coroner came out and didn't get a autopsy review. I don't know if he even saw the body, and he went on all the news channels and said, oh, he definitely died because of the knee to the neck and asphyxiation. No toxicology report, no additional factors, which I've heard on good word that because George Floyd had such a long history of cocaine, it would have massively exacerbated that condition, okay, allowing him to die like that, which, maybe it would have happened to anyone. I'm not making any justifications for any of the actions on any of these sides, okay, but we don't get the truth. Then, of course, the rioters. Oh, the rioters. And we find out that Antifa has just been waiting for this moment, just waiting in the wings. Over a year ago, Donald Trump threatened to make Antifa a terror organization. And you know who stopped him? The left got so outraged, they got some of their rhinoceros Republican friends, their rhino Republicans like your Mitt Romneys and your Murkowskis, to lobby the president to not make Antifa a terror group. Had they done that a year ago, there probably would have been very little violence in our country. It would have been totally isolated to Minneapolis, most likely. Peaceful protests, for sure. Violence, looting, rioting, nope. Sorry. That's mainly Antifa. The news is being so dishonest right now, trying to claim that all these protests are peaceful. Folks, I got news for you. 21 cities had large-scale rioting this last week. I listened to that press conference with Bill Barr and all of the Justice Department law enforcement agencies. Quite fascinating. Quite fascinating. The blame was pinned fairly strongly at Antifa. It was also laid out that Antifa is an international terror organization. Doesn't sound like the designation's been officially made yet, but I support it and I want it made now. I want bank accounts frozen. I want everything that we've done to Al-Qaeda and ISIS to stop them in their tracks. I want it done to Antifa. It's not okay. It's not okay for violence to be taught, trained, and perpetuated on our shores like that. It's unbelievable to me that people don't support that. The truth of the matter is, I think that the silent majority in America overwhelmingly supports law enforcement, overwhelmingly supports law and order, wants there to be one law with equal justice under it for all. That's what we want. Now, a lot of people don't realize the systemic problem we have. We keep saying we have a systemic problem with racism. Folks, we have no systemic problem with racism. I'll say it. None. Zero. The systemic problem we have is lack of justice. Let me give you some examples. How do you think people were outraged last year when Jussie Smollett had all the charges dropped after we watched him perpetrate a hoax on America? I got beat up and lynched in MAGA country at 2 in the morning in Chicago during a winter storm. Okay? How do you think Americans felt about justice when he got let off? Didn't feel very good. Didn't even get a trial. You know, it would have been one thing if a jury acquitted him. It's another thing when the George Soros-funded district attorney Kim Foxx lets him walk. How do you think we felt when James Comey got a pass after 2 criminal referrals to the Justice Department and then he was just not prosecuted? How do you think we felt when Andrew McCabe had multiple criminal referrals for lying under oath and was just not prosecuted? How do you think we felt when Roger Stone, who is claimed to have lied under oath, but by all accounts, all we can tell from what he lied under oath about was just the recollection he had of an event was different than Steve Bannon's. It's not that their recollections are mutually exclusive. It's just that their recollections are different. And he's got a 40-month jail term, and we find out that the lead jurist was anti-Trump and anti-Flynn since long before she was picked as a jurist all over her social media. How do you think we felt about justice then? Every time there's no justice for a black man because of police brutality, there's hundreds of examples of other times when justice isn't served and it's rubbed in our faces. It's almost like the media amplifies these instances with no justice. I mean, they amplify it for the ratings, right? But it's almost like the way they lay these things out there, it's like they have an agenda. They just want us to believe there's no justice. They want us to take justice into our own hands. They want normal peasants to side with Antifa. The government wants that. This government will not be overthrown by Antifa. I'm sorry. Is it possible to cause chaos? Yes. Soter? Yes. Discord? Yes. Are you ever going to implement an anarchist communist regime in this country? Not anytime soon. Okay? It's not happening. Remember that Second Amendment? I mean, there's a line. We don't know where Americans' line is, but I promise you, when you start separating kids from their parents, I promise you in America, people will not be getting on train cars and going to the slaughterhouse. Okay? I just don't believe it. Now, do I think Antifa can sow discord? Yeah. And what they want to do is they want the normal Americans to sympathize with them. They want us to see the injustices, which are real, and to directly try to confront and destroy the government behind it. Look, I'm not about that. That I am not about. I'm about reform. I'm about fixing it. I'm about going after the things that matter. Election fraud. Got to stop. We can't control our government or ring it back in if we have election fraud. Election fraud is critical. One person, one vote, end of story. It's that simple. Whatever we got to do to ensure and guarantee that that is the case, we got to do it. I'm a huge proponent of voter ID. I think the arguments against voter ID are literally based in racism. Like you have to be a racist to not want voter ID. You have to have the low expectations, the soft bigotry of the low expectation that minorities are incapable of getting an ID. I mean, do you complain about this with the DMV? Do you go, we got to get DMVs in these low-income neighborhoods because minorities don't have access to driver's licenses? Come on. If you ask an African-American person in this country, a black, you know what? I've been told that they prefer black. I struggle. I'm one of those kids that, like, I've been told to call the African-American black community like 4 things as I've gone up. It changes, but I guess Donald Trump said definitively the black leaders have asked him, just call us black. They don't like being separated as African American. They're just black. You're white, we're black. It's fine. Salt and pepper. We all get along. So, anyways, if we sympathize with Antifa, then we start allowing these riots to continue. We continue to show up at the protests. We continue to aid and abet and support them. Right? That's what they want. It's almost like they want us to constantly feel this way. We have to band together. We have to be unified in our purpose. We have to channel our frustration and our anger. We need to give our attention to the things that are positive developments in justice. You vote with your eyeballs, folks. The stuff that you click on, the stuff that you look at, that's how people who run media decide to make directions. They don't follow the truth. They follow the clicks. Okay? I mean, literally, a journalist today is not following the story or following the facts. They're following the outrage. They're following the clicks. Right? So we, as consumers of news, need to follow the facts. Follow the facts. Reward journalists who report the facts. Okay? So I have this bitterness in my heart towards CNN, okay? Because they duped me, they deceived me, and that frustrates me. Anytime someone dupes or deceives you, it's frustrating. And I think a lot of America is feeling this with all different parts of our society right now. But I got deceived by CNN because, see, CNN used to be like the neutral news. When I was in college getting a political science degree and I'd watch the news, right? Fox News was like, oh my gosh, these warmongers were getting, they're always talking about weapons of mass destruction, go to Iraq and rah, 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 right? Then you had MSNBC that was like much further left, and I was more comfortable with MSNBC at the time. I'll be honest. I come from a pretty I'm a young liberal, right? Like I really bought into that, and I still do believe in a lot of really liberal principles, but reality has brought me back to earth in some ways, and I'm not a Marxist or a socialist, so I wouldn't say that I left the Democrat Party. I'd say the Democrat Party left me if I had to make that assessment. Let's just go with the good old Ronald Reagan saying. But nonetheless, is a joke. So I used to always watch CNN because it was the neutral news, right? It was the middle. You had Fox on the right, MSNBC a little bit further to the left, and CNN was always kind of right down the middle. Well, somewhere around the time that, Jeff Zucker took over, it started to just kind of go left. And then it's not even that it's left news. It's that it's just anti-Trump news. So after Trump was elected, I remember, I've got all the news apps on my phone, and I read the news religiously, folks. I mean, I read the news like like most people watch UFC or NASCAR. I mean, I know everyone. I'm super into it. I read it every day. The headlines. I get really jolly when I watch committee meetings. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I look forward to the 52 committee meetings that are upcoming in the Justice Committee or the Senate Justice Judiciary Committee. Right? I mean, I'm so excited. I love that stuff. I just totally get into it. Well, I'm going through CNN, and it's like for a matter of weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, the CNN headlines are just hate. And I'd read the articles, because sometimes you need to, you get into the articles. And I'm like, man, I'd read a whole article, and there would be not one source, nothing. Like not one quoted person, not one source. It was a news article. It wasn't in the opinion sections, right? It wasn't an op-ed. This was straight up news reporting that had no news, no sources, nothing for me to go verify, nothing for me to go ask my questions, right? Okay, next article, nothing. Next article, anonymous sources, okay. Next article, anonymous sources, but you're not basing, like even when you have anonymous sources, which are fine, sometimes they're the best, they give a ton of insight. You usually have something, like you have a document or you have something to kind of validate that your conspiracy theory. I mean, that's what journalists are, right? They're just conspiracy theorists, and eventually they find the news, right? There's got to be an anchor or a hook or something where you follow the facts, right? What's the little bit of evidence we have? There was nothing. I mean, it was so bad over such a period of time. I finally just deleted the app from my phone. I don't have the CNN app on my phone. I didn't see a purpose. I would check it if I had it on my phone because it's there. It's a waste of time. I don't know if that'll ever change. If Jeff Zucker leaves, I might take a look again. But folks, this is where we're at. We're at a time in our country where it's hard to trust anything. You got to take in a lot of information to try to distill the truth, and you got to know how to look at, source documents and information. And then you got to balance that against your own personal views and perspective about the world. I hope that my views and perspectives are fair. Right? I hope that I look at things on a sliding scale because that's kind of how life is. But 2020 has been messed up, man. I think everybody knows that. I think around the world, this twin year of 2020 is really wrunging us through the ringer. And I'm going to be honest, folks. I'm looking in front of us and I'm like, there's a lot of forks in this road. This thing can break bad fast. If the riots taught us anything, it's that our society has a thin veneer. And good folks did not come out to fight this one, okay? Good folks maybe showed up to the protest, but good folks did not come out to fight the looters. And when the looters come to your neighborhood, trust me, you ain't sympathizing with them like you did before. Like we saw lots of videos this last week. Hey, the rock comes through the window. We're with you guys. Why'd you do that, right? It's not just about hurting your enemy. Looters hurt everybody. What is in our future here? Are we going to put a cap on this thing? Are we going to get back to the COVID thing, or are we going to move on? I'm going to loop all the way back around. The reason I got so upset, the reason I made this entire podcast today about just a rant of 2020 is because in 2 weeks, if there isn't a COVID outbreak, we should be really upset. And in 2 weeks, if there is a COVID outbreak, we should be really upset. If there's not a COVID outbreak, we should be even more upset. Anybody who does not understand why we're going to be upset in 2 weeks from now when there is or isn't this COVID outbreak because of the violations of social distancing, all those folks who supported and cheered as churchgoers were given tickets and arrested for attending church and exercising their right to assemble and their right to religion and their right to free speech, but then cheered as the protesters went out and violated all the same rules that the churchgoers violated. Those hypocrites need to look in the mirror. They need to look in the mirror good and long and hard, because that is the worst kind of hypocrisy. The worst kind of hypocrisy. And on that, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, by the way, if you like it, share it, leave a comment, leave a review. Love to hear from you.